So we've been on poetry for like 2 weeks now. We've been treating what poetry is and talking a bit about structure last. So we just um poetry and how to understand poetry basically. Last week we talked about structure. 2 weeks ago we talked about structure in um poetry, and poem structure is just basically about how a poem or poetry is organized from the lines, the stanzas, and everything. So when you hear the structure, the structure of a poem is just how it is organized, all right? So most times, so the structure affects how a poem is read and interpreted and appreciated. And I know I sent an example of a particular structure, like a traditional structure, though, a sonnet by William Shakespeare. And we see that most sonnets are 14-line poems, and they follow this rhyme scheme, or you can say they follow this structure. I will see here. I don't know if you see the slide A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. So that's a structure. When you think about when you come across anything about structure, you just know that it's particularly talking about the rhyme scheme, how the poet tries to organize the either the lines of the poem or the stanzas of the poem. All right. So now another form of structuring is versification. So, versification is the art and practice of composing verses, just like the name implies. It's just basically like lines, composing lines of your poetry. And the elements of these key elements of versification includes meter, fit, caesura, enchantment. So meta is the rhythmic pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. It can be like two syllables in a line or three syllables in a line. So it just depending on the poet here and how he's trying to express himself and the kind of message he's trying to pass across and his diction. So now when we talk about fit, basically it's just the unit of the meter. And you're seeing examples. We have ambic, trochee, dialect, and anapes. So these are just like um it can either be 2 syllables, 3 syllables, 4 syllables, just depending on the particular style of writing or diction the poet is using to express himself. So caesura is just a natural it's a natural pause in the line. Like instead of using they still come out, but it's just like maybe when you are reading a particular line in a poem now, and you just there's a pause there. Let's say I saw the sun. There's no comma. It's just like you trying to like catch breath, and then like it looked bright and beautiful. So where there is no comma, that pause in between those words now in line is called caesura. So enchantment is when a sentence or a phrase runs onto the next line without a pause. Right? Understand? Like it's just the opposite of the one I talked about. So some common standard forms in poetry. We have couplet, sources, quatrain, queen, sextet, and octave. Couplet is a line of um,
Hafiz, you cannot
two standards having.
cannot Sorry, ma, please, the screen is not clear.
I say, is it clear now?
No, I can't see it. Okay, it's clear
I'm
now,
getting
yes.
is it- okay, the network. So some common standard forms are couplet. When you hear couplet, it's just talking about two lines of a poem. When a poem is just two lines, a torset is three-line standard, and quatrain, four line, cinquain, five, sestet, six, and octave, eight. So, of this now, a person can decide to write, okay, a four-line poem, but you choose to do it in using two, like the spacing of of two couplets. I don't know if you understand what I just said now. So, like, just basically talking about structure. So you arrange the lines of the poem, or the poet arranges the lines of his poem using any of these forms. He might pick to use maybe two lines or three lines or five, as the case may be. So we have another form, that is the haiku. It's a Japanese poetic form though, and it's a three-line form that has a 575 syllable structure. And it's a traditional poetic form. You don't really see this type of poem around this in these times because it's old. So an example of this is gentle spring breezes. Los, please turn off your mic so that we'll not be hearing all these background noises. So um, the example I was trying to I don't know, can you see the slide? So the example is gentle spring breezes, blossoms sparse in the wind, nature comes alive. So you're seeing that this poem is a three-line poem with a 575 syllable. So all these are just peculiar to the traditional poetic style. Now, we talked about free verse last week. And when you hear free verse, you know that, okay, you're talking about any poem that doesn't have any standard, like, or let's say, doesn't have any structure of writing. Just as the name implies, there's no set pattern, there's freedom of expression. You can write it, and this free verse is common in the modern poetic style. So, structured poetry takes your mind to traditional style. Free verse takes your mind to the modern style. So structured poetry adheres to specific rules about the form, the rhyme, and the meter. You get, so all these structured poetry, they follow these strict rules. They must go by rhythm, by the meter. You understand? So free verse doesn't have any of those. There's no specific pattern of the specific rhyme scheme that you will follow in the free verse poetry. All right. So in comparing the two, we have structured sonnet. Sonnet is a 14-line poem. And now for free verse in the modern poetry, like I said, we have an example of a free writer, a folk free poet as Walt Whiteman. So free verse uses line breaks, uses pauses, uses readings creatively without rules. Yes, for it to be a poem, you know that they have to be reading, but it's not like restricted. You use your reading, yes, use your verse, yes, but there's no restriction to how you want to express yourself. So the importance of structure in poetry is that it influences the reader's pace and focus. All right. So it can highlight key ideas, set tune, and support the theme. That's most times the essence of structuring this poem. So you can be able to understand poet's tone better. So a rigid form like a sonnet can enhance control, while free verse may better reflect spontaneity or emotional flow. That's to say, when you're trying to give you the example with a sonnet now, a sonnet like exercises control in the sense that it's a 40-line poem made up of three quadrants. That's um four lines, four standards that has four lines and two couplets at the end. So this kind of restricted, this kind of like having a big control. You don't go outside that writing style or rhyme scheme, if I put it that way. But for free verse, you are free, that is spontaneous, just to ensure that the people or the message you're trying to pass across is well gotten by the audience. All right. So understanding structure helps readers decode deeper meanings. So when people are able to understand the structure of a poem, they are able to get depth in meanings, like they get or understand what the writer of this poem is trying to talk about. So what's the relevance of poetry in the society? We have emotional outlet, we have cultural preservation, social commentary, and just like we're doing now, entertainment. So we have for entertainment, we said that we have performance poetry. So performance poetry now, I think that has evolved to what we call spoken word, because most times now we don't really see people who poets these days are not really popular, if I put it that way. We don't really call them poets in the sense of that word. Most of them are now like spoken word artists. You get, you see that most of the words are actually they have a depth meaning, but they are spontaneous. They don't follow any structure. You understand? So we have rap. It has rhythm, of course. But when you pick up the lyrics of some rap now, you don't see them having it must be 14 lines, it must be 3 lines, it must be this and that. So that's modern poetry for you. So rap, spoken word, all of them fall under the modern poetry act. You understand? We have lyrical storytelling. So that's the entertainment, how relevant poetry is to the society and how it has evolved. Now, as an educational tool, what we're doing now, you're learning it as part of your course. So it encourages creativity and critical thinking. So the more you try, the more you learn about poetry, the more your creativity is evoked, the more you think deeply, the more you understand most dictions of poets. Yeah. So now, another relevant social commentary. So this challenges injustice and provokes thought. So there are some poems or some people who rap will be more direct or more relatable. You hear they're actually talking about some things that happen in the society or happen to them. So either they are putting this through their lyrics, and most people can actually relate to what they are saying. You get. So cultural preservation maintains the language, it maintains the tradition and identity of the people. Now, definitely, as an emotional outlet, it expresses joy, sorrow, love, and anger. All of this can be seen. Either the writer is angry or he's passing across a deep sorrow or expressing joy or something. But poetry, being relevant to society, is like the emotion is able to evoke. So we have examples of poetry's societal impact. We have Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. This about empowerment and resilience. We have Ni Osundari's poems about environmental awareness and activism. We have Bob Dylan's song lyrics. This influence public opinion on war and civil rights. And we have spoken word poetry. This is a modern form of activism and youth engagement. So these are some examples of poetry and societal impact. So all of this has shown one. I know from how I'm still talking about poetry, you know how much poetry has evolved from just being a structured piece of writing to a writing that's more spontaneous, more relatable, more engaging to people. You know, I see that poetry now from just being 4 lines, 5 lines piece of work that most times I know people of this age will find boring to read. You understand? So now most times this it has now evolved to like all the spoken words where people engage more to and they relate to it better. So the summary of the class is the structure gives poem form and function. Versification provides rhythm and flow. Stanza forms organize thoughts and enhance expression. Poetry serves personal, cultural, and societal functions. And it also understands, like, self understanding form understanding of poetry forms deepens appreciation of poetry. Like you understand poetry and your knowledge of it is deepened. All right. So any questions? By next week we'll start treating your book. Well, we've already talked about Mind Boy here. We've talked about Mind Boy, we've talked about Othello. Okay. We talked about Othello. People will just read that on your own, but we'll start treating other books so people can have a better understanding. So it will be easier for you guys in your exams, your forthcoming. You have nothing to fear. I will just go with.